Hello watch enthusiasts. Now today I'd like to talk about my favourite microbrands. Now microbrands are often discussed in the watch industry and the watch world because they tend to offer different models and different designs which tend to take a certain amount of controversy because some brands try to produce very accurate homages to watches in the microbrand segment, while others make extremely different watches which really don't look like anything else on the market. But either way, they attract a lot of attention because they're not the main, the big companies, so one can see new things appear every day. And personally, I find this very exciting. In this list, however, I'd like to cover the watches which I think are made by brands which really do offer something excellent for the price, and just an excellent product which is different as well on the market. Now the first brand which I'd like to look at is Borealis, and they are a brand which produce these very individual dive watches, which in my opinion look very elegant and have a really very interesting design. Now unlike most small micro brands, Borealis don't really make homage watches. These watches are very much individual designs, and they may be inspired by watches on the market, but really don't follow in the trends of watches which really do mimic other timepieces. Some of my favourites from Borealis are, for example, their Bull Shark, which is this very vintage-inspired dive watch with a rather impressive 2,000 metre water resistance, which is again something which Borealis have become known for, their very, very deep water resistances. Also, I appreciate the design of this watch harking back to the 1950s dive watches, with their unprotected crowns and lollipop second hands. The gold accents on this watch are also very attractive and really do give the whole watch a very old-fashioned look, while retaining that modern water resistance and those modern features such as the strong lume. Borealis do also make much more modern watches like their Seafarer 2, which has a very unique design, but still follows in classic lines such as having the orange minute hand to be more legible underwater. Equally, it has this very, very, very impressive water resistance of 4,000 meters. Which I do trust because these watches have been used by a lot of divers recently, and so far I haven't heard any problems with them. They equally do come in these bold colours, which are also rather nice at this price point. Now the movements inside these watches are Miyota 9015s, which are very reliable Japanese movements, and though they're not Swiss movements, they're not Swiss made, they do still actually feature a lot of technology which is seen, and a lot of features which are seen on Swiss movements, such as hacking and hand winding, which are features which I think are more and more important really in a small brand's watch. Equally, these movements are very easily and inexpensively serviced, which is something which is nice to see when it can actually become very uneconomical to spend a lot on a service for a watch which didn't cost thousands and thousands. Next we have a brand from Vancouver by the name of Helios. And these are a company which have made a lot of dive watches of very attractive designs, and these watches are very different in their designs, but they're more minimalistic than Borealis, for example. Now, I find their design cues quite attractive because they focus also on pure design and pure aesthetics, as well as functionality. For example, this puck design, this puck watch, which is, as the name would imply, a sort of a disc-shaped wristwatch with integrated shrouded lugs. And this watch is very thick and a high-depth water-resistant watch, but it still has an elegance which I can't really put my finger on. The style of their watches also vary. For example, this supercompressor design, the Laguna, also has a very different design, a cushion-style case with those twin crowns, which is very, very different to the puck, but both are recognisable as Helios models, which is really something to achieve in a small brand. I also find the design of these watches and attention to detail very impressive for the $500 to $600 mark. For example, the dials are very clean in their design, but all the markers are metal surrounded and clearly very high quality, as is the finishing of the cases. Now, I personally find attention to detail very attractive in a micro brand because often one sees this neglected in a lot of Microbrands watches due to the very nature of the brand still being quite small. But it's really very nice to see a brand which takes this extremely seriously and does a very, very good job. Now again, the movements inside these watches are Miyota 9015s, but again they're easily serviced and a high quality movements compared to previous models of the in the Miyota range of movements, which has really shown a great leap in terms of the quality of these movements and what they offer. This next brand steps into the real high end of Microbrands, and this is a brand called Mark II. And this is a brand which really does everything which I appreciate in a watch which is going to make an homage. They pay real attention to detail with regards to what the original watch looked like. For example, this version, called the Nassau, is actually an homage to the late 50s and early 60s Submariners. But they've paid real attention to the finishing of the case, the finishing of the hands, and the size of the large crown, to make a watch which is extremely attractive to someone who is a vintage watch geek. Now, though the water resistance of this watch, for example, isn't immense, it is exactly what the original was, so you can get the same experience as owning the original watch in its day, which is something which I think is undervalued in favour of enormous dive ratings and very thick cases. I also find the fact that these watches are effectively handmade for a price of $900 very, very impressive. The fact that these can be made in the USA for this price is really beyond belief. For a slightly higher price, they do also offer different designs, such as the Ben Roos designs, which were obviously watches which were originally commissioned for the US Navy and for their divers. But here they make this version called the Paradive, which really takes that its inspiration from this watch and recreates it, but using modern technology and making a very impressive watch. This watch also includes a helium release valve, which again, for a professional diver's watch, is something that is appreciated and not often seen at this price point. Something I also like about Mark II is the fact that their watches are, in some cases, taking the original design and then moulding it to a modern environment. For example, this fulcrum clearly takes inspiration from a Rolex Submariner, but makes it a very modern product with this fully brushed case and 300-metre water resistance. Also, again, the markers have been changed, and it has a 12-hour GMT bezel, GMT/dive bezel, making it altogether more useful in different situations. It also does have a helium release valve on the left-hand side, even, which again improves the usability of this watch if it's going to be really used under professional conditions. Something which I also appreciate is the fact that these watches have been carefully fitted with good movements. So, for example, the Nassau has an ETA 2824, which is again a very reliable Swiss movement, which is then regulated by Mark II to give it a better timekeeping. And then the Soprod A10 in this fulcrum is regulated to 6 positions and effectively COSC certified. What I also find very impressive from a small brand is the fact they've also made a slightly less expensive watch for $590, which is made in Japan, under the same name to offer a slightly more budget line to their more expensive dive watches. And this really does show business knowledge and business sense, which is something nice to see in a small brand. Finally, we have a company which I absolutely love, and which I've only recently come across. This is Crepas, and they're a brand which make these vintage-inspired dive watches of a really high grade and quality, but with an extremely individual design. I know I've said that a lot in this video, so you can clearly see what I appreciate in a small brand, but in this case they really have gone the extra mile to make a watch which is interesting and different. For example, this L'Océan has the crown moved to the 6 o'clock position, which fits into the bracelet in a particular fashion, thus making it pretty much impervious to being hit on things. It also has a highly legible dial with the date at 6 o'clock, which again makes this watch look very old-fashioned, but very symmetrical and well designed. The water resistance of this watch is also a testament to its quality and good design, in terms of those 1,200 metres out of a relatively reasonably sized wristwatch. They do also make watches which remind me of watches which were made by Omega in the 70s. For example, the Seamaster 1000 in this Crepasse Le Grand. And this is, again, a 1,200 metre diver with that wonderful design with those shrouded lugs. And that large design with those crown guards. It also has those traditional plongeur-style hands, which I love in a vintage-inspired dive watch. These also are powered by ETA 2892s, which again make them very reliable and bring them up to a higher grade of Swiss movement. Also, details like that fully loomed sapphire bezel show that they've really thought about the resistance of this watch as well. They've also placed a helium release valve on the left-hand side of the watch, thus increasing the diving capabilities of this watch. I think what I like the most about these watches is the fact that they're willing to be playful with their design, and that they are really trying to make something individual and different, which is more than can be said for a lot of brands which are more commonly known, because this company really is marketing to a niche. No watch in their lineup demonstrates this better than their Deco Master, and this is a watch which is again based on that Seamaster 1000 and its design, and also all the versions of it with the different types of hands and different types of bezels. But the incredible thing is what they've gone for with this watch is the technology and the ideas they've gone for. So, for example, they have a reproduction of the Seamaster 1000 with the decompression time bezel and that rather bizarre white hand for the minutes, and also the standard dive bezel, but equally that wonderful different coloured depth bezel, which of course, depending on which colours are visible, because of course different light penetrates different depths of water, you can judge your depth using that bezel, which is a really wonderful and very interesting feature. These watches do also demonstrate a real strength and durability, in that they are 4,000 metres water resistant, and equally have a highly anti-magnetic case. Anyway, I'll finish on a picture of this beautiful Deco Master. So thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this video. And if you did, then please do like, share and subscribe if you'd like to see more content on this channel. So thank you very much for watching. This is Arm on the Watch Guy, over and out.